My name is Cassandra Wells, and for most of my life, I've been the one everyone turns to when something breaks. The car, the bills, the secrets, all of it somehow ended up in my lap. If responsibility were a crown, mine would have been welded on years ago. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a 2-bedroom house that always smelled faintly of burnt coffee and unpaid dreams. My parents were ordinary people who learned to stretch a dollar until it screamed. And I learned early that kindness was a currency too, one that ran out faster than money. When they passed, the family orbit shifted toward me. My younger brother Matt called it natural leadership. What he really meant was that I had the better credit score. My sister Denise lived 2 neighborhoods over and had perfected the art of crisis. Every month she found a new emergency: rent, tuition, dental work, phone bills, and every month I paid it, telling myself family came first. It was easier to keep them whole than to watch them fall apart. At 35, I was still living in the same tiny apartment I'd rented after college. The furniture was secondhand, the wallpaper peeling, but it was mine. Every morning I'd ride the train downtown to the marketing firm where I'd been promoted just enough to survive, not enough to celebrate. The city skyline glimmered through the windows, and sometimes I'd catch my reflection between the towers. A woman who looked composed, but felt like scaffolding holding up everyone else's life. The pattern was predictable. Matt borrowed to start a business. It failed. Denise borrowed to re-educate herself. The classes never finished. When I tried to say no, they'd remind me of birthdays I'd missed or rides I hadn't given. Guilt, their favorite inheritance. Still, I told myself it was love. It had to be. On Sundays, they'd all gather in my apartment because it was the cleanest, the warmest, the one with functioning light bulbs. I'd cook while they laughed, and at the end of the night, I'd be the one washing dishes while they argued over who got leftovers. Matt once joked, "Cass, you'd make a great maid if this office thing ever falls through." They laughed. I laughed too, but it caught somewhere deep in my throat. The truth was, they didn't mean harm. They just didn't see me anymore. They saw utility. They saw the hand that never failed to reach into a purse. Last December, the cracks widened. Denise needed a temporary loan to cover her credit cards. Matt needed me to co-sign another lease. When I hesitated, they exchanged glances over dinner like conspirators. Matt said, "Come on, Cass, you're the stable one. You always figure things out." That night, when the door closed behind them, I sat in the quiet and finally asked myself a question I'd avoided for years. What would happen if I stopped figuring things out for everyone else? The answer came in pieces over the next few weeks, in the silence of my empty apartment, in the reflection of cold office windows, in the sound of my own tired heartbeat. I didn't owe them my exhaustion, still I kept paying, out of habit, out of fear, out of love that had become a leash. The real turning point arrived on an ordinary Tuesday evening. The office vending machine had eaten my dollar again, so I stopped at the corner store near my building to grab dinner, a frozen lasagna and a scratch-off ticket. It was a silly ritual. Every payday I'd buy one, joke with the cashier about my future millions, and toss it in my purse. This time I scratched it right there at the counter. The numbers lined up, all of them. At first I thought the print was misaligned. The cashier leaned over, eyes wide. "Ma'am," he said, "I think you just won." I laughed because it didn't make sense. Things like this didn't happen to people who bought store-brand pasta. But the scanner beeped and his expression didn't change. I was holding a ticket worth $47 million. $47 million. I walked home in a fog. The city lights looked softer, almost amused, as if Chicago itself knew what I was carrying in my coat pocket. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, and stared at the ticket. I should have called someone, but I didn't. For the first time, I kept something entirely for myself. The phone buzzed, Matt again, asking if I could cover his utilities just until Friday. I looked at his name on the screen, then at the ticket, and a strange calm spread through me. I realized that night I wasn't going to spend this money the way they expected. I wasn't going to announce it, or brag, or vanish to some beach. I was going to watch. I was going to learn who my family really was when they thought I was still poor. And then, when the time was right, I'd show them the difference between generosity and grace. The morning after I won, the city looked the same, but nothing inside me was. I rode the train to work with the same coffee cup, the same gray coat, the same weary faces around me. But every sound felt sharper, every detail brighter. I had spent years watching life from behind a fogged-up window. Now the glass was gone. I didn't quit my job. Not yet. I wanted to see how people behaved when they still thought I needed every paycheck. It's strange how quickly power changes the taste of silence. For the first time, silence tasted sweet. At lunch, I sat with my coworkers, listening to the usual complaints, traffic, bosses, rent, and I realized how invisible I'd been. The woman who lent staplers, baked birthday cupcakes, covered shifts, reliable Cassandra, dependable, disposable. They didn't know that the quietest person at the table could buy the company 3 times over. When I got home, the answering machine blinked. Denise again. Cass, you still up? I just need $500 until my check clears. 500 used to sound small. Now it sounded like measurement. How cheaply she valued my help. I called her back and said, I can't right now. She sighed, half annoyed, half entitled. You okay? You sound off. Just tired, I said. That part was true. Tired of being the family bank. After I hung up, I poured wine and sat by the window. Outside, the L train hummed like distant thunder. 47 million. I whispered it once, testing the shape of the number in my mouth. It didn't feel like greed. It felt like breathing. I spent the next week making quiet moves. Hired a lawyer under confidentiality, opened an anonymous trust, arranged everything so that my name would stay off headlines. My lawyer, a calm man with silver glasses, asked, Are you sure you don't want to tell anyone? I smiled. Not yet. I want to see how people treat me when I have nothing left to give. He nodded like he'd heard that before, but I could tell he hadn't. Meanwhile, my family kept circling. Matt needed help covering his car payment. Denise wanted a new phone for her daughter. Each time I said no, their voices hardened a little. You've changed, Denise said once. She was right. By February, I'd moved into a nicer apartment across town. Nothing flashy, just clean, quiet, mine. I told them my old landlord was raising rent and I'd found a good deal through work. They didn't question it. They rarely listened that long. The difference between truth and lie is attention, and they never paid much of it. I started watching them from a distance. Denise posted endless photos of family unity while texting me for grocery money. Matt tagged himself at expensive bars, always celebrating future deals. Each image felt like a mirror cracking under its own reflection. Then one evening, Denise called crying. They're threatening to cut my power. I don't know what to do. For a second, the old instinct flared. To fix, to rescue, to fill the gap before it swallowed her. But I stayed quiet long enough to feel the weight of her choices settle where they belonged. I'm sorry, I said softly. I can't this time. She hung up without goodbye. When the line went dead, guilt didn't come. Relief did. That night I walked along the lakefront. The wind was sharp, biting through my coat, but it felt clean. Chicago's skyline glowed across the water, glass and steel and determination. I realized that I wasn't angry at them anymore. I was curious. I wanted to know who they were when I stopped being their safety net. So I set a plan, a slow test. Over the next months, I'd let distance grow, see who checked in, who cared without asking. I'd invite them each, separately, to something small, a dinner, a weekend visit, and listen carefully to the silences between their words. The money sat untouched in accounts and investments. The interest alone could have fed them for years. But feeding people who never learned gratitude only breeds more hunger. One Friday in March, I found an old family photo at the back of my drawer. We were kids, Matt missing a tooth, Denise clutching my arm, me grinning like the sun itself was ours. I traced the edges and whispered, You had everything, Cass. You just forgot it. That weekend I baked a pie and took it to my neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Blake who always lent me sugar. She opened the door, surprised. For me? I nodded. For once I wanted to give something without being asked. She laughed. That's the best kind of giving. I realized she was right. Maybe this fortune wasn't about revenge. Maybe it was about balance. but part of me still wanted to see faces when the truth finally landed, because love built on convenience collapses under honesty, and I was done holding up weak walls. It's strange what money does to fear. Before the lottery, every decision felt like a cliff: rent, groceries, a dental bill that came at the wrong time. After the win, the cliffs were still there, but the ground stretched wider beneath me. I could fall 100 times and still land softly. Freedom didn't roar, it whispered. I spent the first month learning how to hold that freedom quietly. My lawyer connected me to an accountant who spoke in numbers like poetry. Trusts, blind investments, shell companies. I didn't want yachts or marble floors. I wanted invisibility. Wealth attracts noise, and I'd lived in noise my entire life. The accountant asked, "What's your long-term goal?" I said, "Peace." He nodded like that was an acceptable profit margin. With the money tucked behind layers of confidentiality, I returned to my small routines. Coffee, morning train, the walk past the lake. People looked the same, but I no longer felt identical to them. It wasn't arrogance, it was distance. I'd stepped out of a current that had always dragged me along. I started volunteering quietly at a youth center near my apartment. It grounded me. The kids didn't know my name or what I owned. They just liked that I listened. One of them, a 15-year-old named Jordan, told me, "You talk like somebody who's already done all the hard parts." I smiled. Maybe I just learned what's actually hard. While the rest of the city thawed into spring, my family's calls grew fewer but sharper. Denise texted links to crowdfunding pages, new business ideas. Matt sent half-hearted updates about his latest job, always with a line about tight times. They had learned to disguise asking with conversation, but I heard it anyway. I decided to test the theory. I created a second number, a new persona, Clara, a supposed investor looking to fund small ventures. Using an email account run by my accountant's firm, I contacted Matt's startup page. I offered him a small grant on the condition of transparency, clear budgets, progress reports, proof of effort. He replied within an hour, enthusiastic, humble, promising. But by week 3, the report stopped. By week 5, the email bounced. When I checked the business registration, it had already dissolved. So much for ambition. Denise was subtler. She started posting about toxic family members who hold you back. I read the captions with quiet amusement. She'd borrowed $5,000 the month before my no, and I could see resentment fermenting into performance. One evening she called, voice dripping concern. "Cass, you've been distant. Everything okay?" I said, "Perfect, actually." She didn't know how to answer that. By summer, I'd built 2 lives, the one they still saw, steady job, modest apartment, and the one that existed in shadows of bank statements and quiet investments. It felt like watching my own movie from behind the curtain. Then something unexpected happened. The firm where I worked announced layoffs. Half the office panicked. The other half pretended not to. My manager called me in, nervous. "Cassandra, I'm sorry, but your department's merging. We'll have to let you go." I nodded. "That's fine." He blinked. "You're taking this well." I smiled. Maybe it's time for something new. The next morning, I emailed my resignation instead of waiting for HR paperwork. Then I walked out into the sunlight and laughed quietly. For the first time since college, I had no job and no fear. With the free time, I started drawing again, something I hadn't done since art school before responsibility swallowed me. My sketches were rusty but alive, faces from train rides, the city skyline, the hands of people holding coffee cups. I realized that money hadn't bought me a new life. It had returned the one I'd traded away. Still, the tests weren't over. I wanted to see how my family would react to the news of my job loss. So I called them. Matt said, "That sucks, but you'll bounce back." "Hey, could you still help me with rent this month?" Denise said, "Oh no, Cass. That's awful. I'll pray for you." Then she added, "When you get your severance, could you loan me a little until next payday?" The pattern was flawless in its predictability. That night I sat with my journal open and wrote, "The difference between love and use is who shows up when you're empty." A few weeks later, I began to set the next layer of the plan in motion. The reveal. But on my terms. It started with a simple dinner invitation. I booked the restaurant under my old name. No VIP table, no reservations that hint at wealth. Just a quiet Italian place tucked between two bookstores where the lighting is soft enough to make everyone look a little kinder. I told them it was a family catch-up. My treat, I added, because that's the language they understood best. They arrived late, laughing loudly as usual. Denise wore a new handbag. Matt smelled like expensive cologne. The performance began before they even sat down. I listened to their stories, new ventures, new problems, the familiar rhythm of ambition and disaster. Every few minutes, one of them slipped in a hint about money. Investors are tough right now, Matt sighed. Creditors are merciless, Denise murmured. I just nodded and refilled their glasses. When the food came, I let the conversation wander until it thinned out. Then I said lightly, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what matters lately. When you lose your job, you start to see things clearly." Denise looked startled. "Lose your job?" I didn't mention it. "The firm downsized." Matt frowned. "You should have said something." "We could have..." He stopped there, realizing he had nothing to offer. I smiled. "It's fine. I'm managing." They relaxed, relief flickering behind their eyes. I could almost read their thoughts. Good. She still has enough to help us later. The waiter brought dessert, tiramisu with cocoa dust like snowfall. As they dug in, I studied them the way an artist studies shadows. The truth is, they weren't bad people. They were just comfortable in a version of me that no longer existed. I wondered if they'd even like the person I was becoming, the one who no longer paid for peace. When the check came, I covered it as always. But this time, the money came from a black card with no name they'd recognize. Denise noticed the shimmer of the logo and tilted her head. "New bank?" I shrugged. "A small upgrade." She smiled uncertainly, trying to gauge if I was joking. After dinner, we stepped out into the warm night. The streetlights painted everything in gold. Denise hugged me and said, "You'll be fine, Cass. You always are." Matt clapped my shoulder. "Don't forget, if you ever need help with anything, call me." I almost laughed. I almost said, "Help me?" Instead, I nodded. "I will." When they left, I walked down the block toward the lake. The air smelled of lilacs and asphalt. I felt strangely proud, not for deceiving them, but for finally understanding the game I'd been playing all my life. The next morning, I transferred a small sum from my trust to a charity I'd once volunteered for, the Youth Center, where Jordan still drew superheroes in marker ink. I wrote the donation under a pseudonym, the Cassandra Foundation. It wasn't vanity, it was gratitude. If I could give quietly, maybe the world would balance itself a little faster. Days drifted into weeks. The family reached out less, perhaps sensing distance they couldn't name. I spent my time learning instead. How investments work, how art galleries commission new pieces, how to rebuild a life that wasn't chained to obligation. I took classes, traveled once to New York for an exhibit, walked the city with the calm of someone who owes nothing. In late August, Matt called again. "Big opportunity," he said. "A friend's launching a startup, green tech. I can get in early if I raise $5,000. Could you loan me half?" I said, "Let me think about it." I thought about it for 3 days. Then I wired the full amount, not to Matt, but to the startup itself under Clara's investor profile, the same alias I'd used before. The founder replied with thanks. Matt never mentioned it again. Weeks later, when the company published its backers online, his name wasn't there, but mine, or rather Clara's, was. I smiled. He'd learned soon enough that luck favors the ones who do the work. By autumn, the plan for the reveal took shape. It wouldn't be dramatic, no headlines, no TV checks. I wanted intimacy, truth served quietly. So I rented a small banquet room at the same restaurant, the one between the bookstores. I told them it was to celebrate a personal milestone. They accepted without hesitation. People rarely turn down free food. As the date approached, I found myself less vengeful than curious. I wondered if they'd feel proud, embarrassed, or simply confused. Maybe all three. I hoped, secretly, for a flicker of humility. That small, human moment when someone realizes they've been looking down at the person who was holding them up all along. When the night finally arrived, I dressed simply, a navy dress, no jewelry, hair tied back. The most powerful thing about secrets is how ordinary they can look. At 7:30 sharp, I walked into the restaurant, ready to end the story the way it should have begun, with truth. The banquet room smells like roasted garlic and polished wood. Candles flicker in glass cups, catching reflections off the window. I arrive early, letting the quiet stretch before the noise comes. The manager nods to me. Everything is already paid for. Every bottle of wine chilling on ice. Matt and Denise walk in together, laughing too loudly, a habit they share when they feel unprepared. They hug me, offer compliments they don't mean. "Cass, this place is fancy," Denise says. "Who's the lucky guy?" "No guy," I answer. "Just a celebration." We sit. The waiter pours wine. I notice how they both glance at the label before pretending not to recognize it. It's the kind of bottle that whispers wealth. I begin lightly. "How have you been?" Matt groans about rent. Denise complains about daycare costs. Every word feels scripted. They've said it all before. I listen, nod, sip. Then I lean back and say, "I wanted to thank you both for everything you've taught me." They pause. "Us?" Denise laughs. "What did we teach you?" "Patience," I say, "and how to tell when people only love you for what you can give." The silence that follows isn't heavy yet, just uncertain. Matt jokes, "That sounds deep. You joining a self-help cult or something?" I smile. "No, I just learned something important. Money doesn't change people. It just unmasks them." The waiter sets the first course down. Mushroom risotto, steam curling up between us. They dig in quickly. I let them, because hunger makes people honest. When plates are cleared, I slide 2 small envelopes across the table. "I want you to open these." Matt tears his first. Inside is a check, not huge, but enough to settle his debts twice over. His eyes widen. "Cass, what is this?" "Consider it a parting gift," I say. "You can take it, but after tonight, the Bank of Cassandra is permanently closed." He stares at me, confused. Denise opens hers. Hers is smaller, a prepaid vacation voucher to a spa resort, the same one she'd once bragged about wanting to visit. She blinks, not sure whether to thank me or feel insulted. "What's this about?" she asks. "Closure," I say. "I wanted to give each of you something you've been asking for." "Peace in advance," Matt forces a laugh. "You're talking like you're dying." "Just done living for everyone else." I take a breath. The truth is, I'm not broke. Haven't been for months. I came into some money last year, enough to change everything. I didn't tell you because I wanted to see who you were without it. Their faces shift together. Shock, disbelief, a quick flash of calculation. Denise leans forward. "Wait, how much money?" "Enough." Matt laughs again, higher pitch this time. "So all those times we asked for help. Why didn't you just say you had it?" "Because you weren't asking for help," I say quietly. "You were asking for control." For a long minute, no one speaks. The air hums with everything that's finally visible. Denise looks down at her envelope. "You could have trusted us." "I did," I say. That's what hurt. The waiter returns to refill glasses, unaware that the conversation has already ended. We finish dinner in polite fragments, comments about dessert, the weather, the restaurant decor. They avoid my eyes and I let them. Some truths don't need applause. When the plates are cleared for the last time, I stand. "I'm taking a short trip," I say. "A few months abroad. I'll check in, but don't worry about me. You've always told me I land on my feet." Matt swallows hard. "Cass, come on, we didn't mean—" "It's fine," I interrupt gently. "Now you don't have to." I leave the restaurant with the taste of bittersweet wine and a quiet certainty. The air outside is cool, rain beginning to mist. I walk down the street without looking back. For years I thought revenge would feel like triumph. But standing there, coat collar turned against the drizzle, it feels simpler than that. It feels like balance restored. The next morning, the world feels new. Like the city has been washed clean overnight. I make coffee, open the curtains, and sit by the window while the sky blushes from gray to gold. It's the same Chicago skyline I've stared at my whole life, but for the first time, it doesn't feel like it's leaning over me. It feels like it's standing beside me. My phone doesn't stop buzzing for hours. Missed calls, unread messages, mostly from Denise, a few from Matt. I don't open them. I already know what they'll say. Shock first, then curiosity, then the same desperate reaching that's defined our entire relationship. The cycle always starts with guilt and ends with a request. By noon, Denise's texts have shifted from sweet to sharp. I can't believe you'd test us like that. You made us look stupid. Then softer again. But if you're serious about investing, I've got a business idea. I smile and power the phone off. Some lessons don't need answers. Silence teaches them better. For the first time in years, I walk into a bank not to plead for leniency or sign someone else's loan, but to make choices. I meet with my advisor, my lawyer's friend, a woman named Priya who looks like someone who never apologizes for success. Together, we open an account under my real name. No aliases, no disguises. Just me. When the paperwork is done, she says, "Most people want to spend first." I tell her, "I've already spent enough time trying to prove my worth." That afternoon, I visit the youth center again. The kids are working on a mural, bursts of color across the concrete wall, paint splattered on their clothes and shoes. Jordan spots me and grins. "Hey, Miss Cass." "You're back!" "I told you I would be." He shows me his section, a skyline in red and orange, the city reimagined like fire and dawn. "It's supposed to mean new beginnings," he says. "Looks like you nailed it." He laughs. "We're gonna put your name on the wall, okay?" "Only if you make it small," he nods solemnly. Small but bright, small but bright. That's exactly how this new life feels. Not loud, not glittering, just steady light where darkness used to live. 2 days later, Matt calls. I almost don't answer, but curiosity wins. His voice is tired. "Cass, I'm sorry. I really am. I just didn't know." "What didn't you know?" He hesitates. "That you were serious about being done with us." "I'm not done," I say softly. "Just done being used." He exhales slowly. "Yeah, I get it." For the first time, I think maybe he does. A week passes. Denise shows up outside my building without warning, carrying flowers, the cheap kind you buy at a gas station. She's trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she says. "I didn't mean what I texted. It hurt. I thought we were a team." "We were," I say. "You just stopped noticing when I started carrying all the weight." She nods, eyes glassy. "I miss how it used to be." "So do I. But maybe this is how it's supposed to be now." I don't invite her upstairs. We hug on the sidewalk instead. It's not forgiveness, not exactly, but it's peace. After she leaves, I walk toward the lake, the air crisp and sweet. The skyline glows across the water again, but now it feels like a promise, not a wall. I take a photo, just the reflection of the city trembling in the waves, and post it to my private feed with a caption. "Freedom looks quiet from the outside." That night, I pour a glass of wine and sit on the balcony. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks crackle, a leftover celebration from someone else's life. I close my eyes and smile, because this is what real revenge feels like. Not victory, not applause, but the absence of need. I don't need their approval, their gratitude, or their guilt. I just need the stillness of knowing I finally own my story. The phone buzzes once more, one final message from Matt. "I'm proud of you, sis." "I mean it this time." I don't reply. I just lift my glass toward the window, toward the city, toward the version of me who finally learned that peace can be louder than payback. The night settles soft around me. Tomorrow, maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll start something new. Maybe I'll just sleep in. Whatever I choose, it will be mine, earned quietly, lived fully, loved without apology, and somewhere deep inside, I know Mom and Dad would understand. They'd see the light in me and smile. Because after everything, I finally did what they always hoped I would. I stopped surviving and started living. It's been a year since that night at the restaurant. The night I finally closed the ledger on a lifetime of unpaid debts that weren't mine. People think revenge is about punishment. I used to think that too, but it's not. Real revenge is transformation. It's the quiet evolution that happens when pain stops dictating who you are. My mornings look different now. I wake up before sunrise. Not because I have to, but because I want to. The lake outside my apartment glitters like glass, the skyline stretching upward in soft orange light. Chicago hums awake beneath me. The same city that once chewed me up now feels like it exhales with me. I work again, not for someone else, but for myself. After the reveal, I bought a small design studio near Wabash, just a modest space with tall windows and white walls that smell faintly of paint and ambition. We design campaigns for local artists, small businesses, nonprofits, the kind of people who remind me that work isn't supposed to drain you. It's supposed to light you up. I named the company Clarity Creative, not because it sounded elegant, but because clarity was the one thing I'd spent my whole life chasing. The Cassandra Foundation, the one that started as a quiet donation, has grown too. We fund community art, scholarships, and youth programs across the city. Jordan, the kid from the mural, now interns there. He told me last week, "You always said freedom looks quiet, but yours looks loud now, like color." He's right. My freedom looks like murals, laughter, messy hands, and second chances. As for my family, we speak sometimes. The distance between us has turned into something softer. Matt texts me photos of his small repair shop. He finally started one that actually exists. Denise sends holiday cards. Nothing too emotional but honest, and that's enough. I still don't lend money, but I lend time. Small, healthy doses of it. I've learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you keep locked until the right people learn how to knock. One afternoon last spring, I walked into the same corner store where everything changed, the one with the flickering sign and the tired cashier. He looked up, squinting. "Haven't seen you in a while. Still buying the lucky tickets?" I smiled. No need to anymore. "I already won," he laughed. "Good for you. Hope you spent it right." "I did," I said. "I bought my life back." That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and thought about every moment that led here. The dinners, the guilt, the exhaustion, the silence. All those years I thought I was invisible. I was actually becoming something solid. You can't recognize light until you've memorized darkness. People ask what I'd do differently if I could go back. My answer's simple: nothing. Every bruise taught me balance. Every no I finally said became a seed for something better. If there's one truth this journey carved into me, it's that success isn't about money. It's about reclaiming your narrative from the people who tried to write it for you. I used to be the family fixer, the dependable one, the invisible thread holding everything together. Now I'm the woman who let the tapestry unravel and built something breathtaking out of the loose ends. Sometimes, when I walk along the lake and see my reflection ripple in the water, I whisper to that old version of myself, the one who kept saying yes while her own soul was begging for rest. "I see you now," I tell her. And I remember. Because the greatest revenge is being remembered by the person you almost forgot to be.